All right. A very, very warm welcome to all my viewers and listeners. Uh, my name is Shweta, and I'm here with Rajesh and Manisha from Google Cloud, and I'm going to introduce them in a minute. And really, really happy to be here talking about this very, very interesting topic, which is RISE, Ignite, Innovate, and under the whole inclusion theme in Spark. And as all of you can imagine, it is impossible to innovate unless we are really, really able to reach out and listen to all ideas. And it is not possible to do this without a very, very inclusive culture. And today, it's really a joy to be speaking to Manisha and Rajesh from Google Cloud, which has done some amazing work in building this. So I'm going to start off by, of course, introducing both of them uh, in a very august presence. So Manisha, let me start by talking about Manisha. Manisha uh, has a profile, a wow profile. She is the head of customer engineering for Google Cloud partners in India and South Asia. In this role, she drives the development of Google Cloud partner ecosystem through technology adoption and enablement, joint GTM initiatives, and successful deployment of digital transformation solutions across industries. Over the last 20 years, Manisha has held several technical leadership positions across multiple organizations such as IBM. She's led product engineering, product management, channel technical sales, business development, and strategic alliances. She's worked very closely with customers and partners globally to build several industry focused solutions, leveraging technologies such as cloud, machine learning, IoT, blockchain. And she's really, really passionate about making technology work for businesses. And Manisha, such a pleasure to be talking to you today. Uh, I also have the great pleasure to introduce Rajesh. Rajesh has more than 20 years of experience in designing solutions to meet various business objectives and lead solution and in leading solution consulting teams. He's got deep expertise in enterprise architecture with a specialization in information and analytics architecture across industries. He's again headed several important positions in marquee organizations, and currently he leads pre-sales as customer engineering manager at Google Cloud India. A very, very warm welcome to both of you, Manisha and Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks for
Shweta.
that.
My first question really goes out to Rajesh. Uh, and, when we think about inclusion, of course, the first fault line we do think about is gender, right? So, according to you, what has helped Google Cloud to create an inclusive and gender balanced culture?
Thanks, Shweta. Thanks for the question, and it's great to be here with both Manisha and you. So the way I look at it, it's not really about gender, and the way we look at an inclusive culture is by looking at who is the right person who brings the right attitude and the approach towards a job. It doesn't matter what gender you belong to, right? So that's a starting point, because we don't really want to think about just because an individual is of a specific gender, they have any kind of better way of doing things. So that's the way I think about it, right? Even when I'm hiring, or even when Google is hiring in general, who is the right person to do the job, right? That's a starting point. And then when you start to think about that, then you start to have a little bit more objective discussion, where what does this individual bring to the table to get the job done? So that's where we start. But there are times when we start to see an imbalance, right? Because our intentions are genuine, right? We want the right person for the job, but depending upon who's on the other side, whether they have unconscious bias or whether the way they're thinking, there starts to be an imbalance over a period of time, right? So that's when I think there is a conscious effort to say, how do we course correct and ensure that we're getting a right mix of candidates during the hiring process. Everybody is getting an equal opportunity. And I think Google does a great job from that perspective. I've been here 2.5 years now, right? So 2.5 years may not seem a long time, but in Google it is a long time, right? Because there's so much happening all the time, and you see all the different areas that Google participates in. So here I've seen people taking a conscious effort to say, what can we do to correct the imbalance if you're starting to see there. So it starts with the hiring process. If you're not able to look at it, correct the gender imbalance at the senior level, can we at least start at the internship level? Can we start at when we're hiring not very senior folks, right? And groom them to take up bigger positions over a period of time. So that's the effort that I've seen, right? And the other aspect is about the overall, I would say, the openness from a culture perspective. Google is known, right? When we are on the outside, we're always thinking about what we hear, and then when you actually come in, you realize the openness, true openness of the Google culture, right? There are forums where literally anybody can ask any question to the CEO, not just of cloud, but overall Google, right? Sundar Pichai. And he's very, very candid and open to even answering them, right? There are forums that I've seen within Google, we call it meme gen. It's about memes, right? Memes are getting so popular where people who are not happy about a certain area or a subject, right? They would just post it on MemeGen, no matter who it's addressed to. So a lot of these small things starts to matter. And when you start to bringing in a lot of inclusivity into the way people start to think. And of course, we've got great ambassadors like Manisha, right? Which is a testimony of the whole, the way Google's been thinking about. So that's where we are. I just thought that I'll share my quick perspective on this one.
No, that's fantastic. So what I'm really hearing you say, Rajesh, is it's about meritocracy and it's not about the gender or any other, way of identifying a person. And even then being very mindful and purposeful about checking for imbalances. And of course, like you said, the culture itself is so open, and I'm so happy to hear this meme generator. I think I have to talk to my founder. But when you're able to make fun about something that you're uncomfortable with and the organization has the appetite to listen to, it really, really speaks a lot. And thank you so much. That was very, very, very interesting. And Manisha, now, of course, I come to you. Can you share some examples of specific initiatives? Because Rajesh is right. Sometimes, despite the best intent, imbalances can occur because there are unconscious biases. What initiatives have you seen at Google Cloud to develop the depth of women leadership talent within your organization?
Absolutely. And I think, first of all, thanks to Rajesh, he has beautifully put it together, what we stand for and what we really live on a day-to-day basis, right? So I have been in a couple of organizations in the past career, but I think at Google, we are really committed to making diversity, equity, and inclusion part of everything we do, right? So from how we build our products to how we build our workforce, right? So like Rajesh mentioned about Sundar Pichai, our CEO. So he firmly believes that whether you are building a company or you're leading a country, a diverse mix of experiences, backgrounds, and voices always leads to better discussions, better decision making and better outcome for everyone, right? So I think there are a variety of ways and initiatives through which we are operationalizing this belief. And I would broadly categorize them into, three categories or three themes. Right. So number one is Google at a worldwide level. We have a very strong DEI council, which we are now expanding on from a Google Cloud perspective. Right. At Google Cloud, our whole strategy is to offer a diverse, accessible, and fair cloud offering, and it really is anchored around four things or four strategic themes. Again, number one is representation. So ensuring that we have the right representation of diverse workforce right at the stage of hiring, like Rajesh mentioned, right? So, and number two is progression. So we have hired the right talent, but can we ensure that we are maintaining that equity even at the performance evaluation and promotion cycles, right? Number three is about retention. So that's where I've seen that Google invests a lot in the overall professional development of the employees so that we all can build long-term careers with Google Cloud. There are several initiatives around one-to-one or group mentoring at the moment, which I'm personally part of, which we are specifically driving for women employees at Google Cloud, right? And finally, it's the inclusion, fostering that culture of empathy and belongingness, right? So this is really what we are doing, broadly speaking. Apart from this, we also have 6 work streams around anti-racism education, right? Well-being, diversity, talent management. And everyone at Google Cloud has to undergo a DEI training covering what is the precise language you should be using, right? Inclusive and unbiased leadership. And not just at the time of joining, it refreshes every year. So you have to undergo that every year. And that's the reason we have these, great allies like Rajesh in the organization. Every year, we also do an interesting thing. We have hired the diverse workforce, but we also make sure that somewhere around September, October at a worldwide level, we have something like DEI week where we celebrate our diverse workforce. And that's where we, every sub-region or region does it in their own way, but then we try to celebrate it at the same time because then there is a, that ambience of, celebration in the organization. And then that's where we also invite some of the top women leadership, from across the industry to speak to us and share their personal journeys. Now, while this is happening at a global level, in every region, we have a chapter of the Global DEI Council, which is driving initiatives at a hyper localized level. For example, in India, we are collaborating with WiT-ACE, right, Women in Technology ACE, to spread the awareness of Google Cloud as an organization, our focus on DEI. And it's not just an academic exercise, right? There are initiatives which we are driving to educate aspiring women in technology to get ready to play a role in our growth journey, right? So I think that being said, I feel that DEI, like you mentioned in the beginning, Shweta, the DEI evolution is really a journey, right? And making progress requires a lot of commitment and accountability from the leadership. It's a massive team effort, right? And commitment from all of us. So, these are some of the things which we are up to at the moment now.
Beautifully articulated, Manisha. And I think, here's what I was listening. As I was listening, I was thinking, right? So there's data driven decision making, right? At recruitment. Look at the pipelines, literally. So it's not just anecdotal, intuitive, it's very data driven. You're doing a lot of mentoring, role modeling. You're doing celebration. There's no greater way to engage the heart than by celebrating it together. And then, kind of what you talked about, the DNI initiatives that you're doing, having global initiatives. But I love what you ended with, right? That it is a journey. And I'm going to now talk to Rajesh. And Rajesh, we see this especially in India, probably in South Asia, in our work, that the culture actually is very hierarchical, very, very divided. It's a very, very vertical society we live in. Now, how do you, as a leader, what steps do you take, or what do you do specifically to sort of continue to institutionalize the Google Cloud culture, which is inclusive, probably not counterintuitive to the Indian culture, but still bringing in elements of the Google Cloud culture, which is there is a place and room for everyone. What's your role as a leader?
So firstly, I think fortunately, Google is not as an organization very hierarchical in nature by default, right? It's from a global perspective. And although you mentioned India and Southeast Asia do culturally have that, but it doesn't come down, at least at the organization level for us. We're fortunate from that point of view, right? And that also has to do a lot with, as Manisha also pointed out, starts with the hiring process itself, right? Who are we getting into the organization, not just because of the technical or the functional or the business skills that they bring. That is just one dimension of the overall process, right? In fact, there is a dedicated interview process within Google, which we refer to as Googliness, right? It's called, and we all, Manisha went through it, I went through it, right? Which is nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with how will we do the job. It's just about, scenarios and how would we react to certain situations, and are we googly enough in that sense, right? And that gives us some idea as to how an individual would adapt, how they would work within a team, how would they work with everybody in the organization. So it starts from there, right? And then of course we amplify it further with initiatives such as DEI that emphasize on certain aspect of it, whether it's gender, whether it's other aspects of equity and inclusion. It looks at it very, very holistically from that point of view. And the last thing I would say is that from a Google's perspective, it's not always that in a meeting, right? In a meeting room, it's not just the highest paid individual in the room who has the right to speak, right? That's not how it works, and it goes back to the hierarchical point that you made, right? It's not that, whether it's a physical room or in the virtual room like this that we're doing meetings nowadays. It's even the person who's the junior most has speaks up as anybody else would, and nobody minds that, right? Nobody questions that, why are you talking and why is your boss not talking and so on, right? In fact, we encourage that. If I'm sitting in the same room with somebody who reports into me, I would prefer that individual has a lot more voice or a lot more say in the meeting than I do, because that's the way a lot of exposure is given. So we intentionally try and make that happen, right? So some of these, like I said, small things, but overall they add to the overall thinking culture and the inclusivity, and trying to get away with this whole hierarchical based thinking internally, at least.
Beautifully said. And I'm especially struck by what you said about googliness.
Yeah,
And the fact that it is the job of the leader really to kind of make sure that his or her team members are being heard. I think if you can do
absolutely.
that, then
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Manisha, the same question comes to you. What do you think is your role, especially because you are leading such an important, a huge function, and you're working in a team that may be having some of these biases, prejudices. that stem from our culture. What role do you think you play?
Yeah, and when Rajesh was speaking, I was like, he's reading my mind, right? So I mean, we are so we have so same, we are at the same page, I would say, right? So I think in my mind, what makes people feel included in the organization, right? So I think when people feel that they are being treated fairly, they are being treated respectfully, they are being valued, they sort of belong to where they are, that is when they really feel included, right? And many things are at play. It's not just one person or one thing. It's about organization's mission, the policies, practices, people's behavior. But in my mind, it mostly comes down to the leaders, right? And in fact, I was reading one of the Harvard case studies where they said that what leaders say and do makes up to 70% difference as to whether an individual feels included or not, right? And I think this really matters because the more people feel included, the more they speak up, like Rajesh mentioned, and the better they perform, right? Because all of this, they go the extra mile, right? They collaborate with each other, and all of this really ultimately lifts the organizational performance. And I would totally agree with Rajesh that at Google Cloud we don't have to face that hierarchy and bureaucracy as much. It's much easier, I would say, as we have this very open culture where workforce is encouraged to be vocal, and interestingly managers are measured on how successful they are in implementing this openness, right? So we have a very I would say people management job at Google is quite tough because you go through a lot of feedback, a 360-degree feedback, and twice in a year you're always you have to make sure that every employee in the organization is happy, right? So in my team personally, I treat this as one of the key pillars of my team's effectiveness. And team effectiveness, as per my definition, is a combination of culture and consistency and communication. And I have personally baked it into the KRAs for my team, right? And I regularly share with my team my focus on inclusion, empathy for each other, the respect for each other, which is, by the way, one of the core values of Google, and my zero tolerance for going against these values, right? So, and I think at Google we have this very interesting, nice culture of peer awards and spot bonuses. So you can reward the positive behavior of your two team members who demonstrate inclusiveness, and hence you can create that ripple effect. So I think it's just to conclude, it's very important for a leader to show real commitment to diversity and inclusion in a day-to-day on a day-to-day basis, and more importantly, I think we should openly highlight and discuss the biases, right, that the team might have, or maybe sometimes the leader might get into. So that's my perspective on this.
That's simply superb. So, what struck me in both what you and Rajesh said is some commonalities, right? So, for example, I heard that, it doesn't matter what you say, it's what you do. So the leader do, because
Yeah.
what the leader does is going to be emulated. Every leader, while you have a company, a global policy which is getting implemented, but every leader in some sense is sort of the CEO of his or her own unit and ensuring and getting measured and being held accountable that that this culture is taken care of. And I also I really liked what Rajesh also said, that we fundamentally hire people who are, he's referred to it very as Googliness, but really what I'm hearing is inclusive people, open
Yeah.
people, that foster that kind of creativity and openness. So thank you. That was really very insightful. Manisha, my question is, and we know this, so it might come across a bit funny, but Google uh, in general and Google Cloud in specific has been have been extremely innovative, very creative. Examples are cited all over the world. In fact, in many of the conferences that I've been, the opening line is, "This is how it's done at Google. This is how it's done, in this organization." So, sure, there's a lot of pride there. But specifically, when you think about Google Cloud in India and South Asia, and the time that you've been here, any way that you can example that you can give that this culture, having this culture in Google Cloud, really helped us to be innovative and creative. Any specific examples that come to mind, Manisha?
No, I think it can all be attributed to the culture, because I think it's a well-known fact that Google's founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they set out to have an unconventional company. Even when we applied for the Google roles, the first thing we see on the job description is we are an unconventional company. And I think There's this unique culture of which is driven by innovation, ownership, collaboration, transparency, and there's a healthy disregard for the impossible, right? So this is that I think this unique culture is one of the most important assets that we have. And if you look at Google's mission statement, it's pretty ambitious, right? So we say that we organize world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, right? This to me is a pretty big goal to set and speaks volumes about how inclusion is at the core of everything we do and we build, right? So all our products is, whether it's Gmail or Maps or Android or Chrome and now Google Cloud, work equally well for everyone in the world, right? So it also goes back to the three values we have. So we have the three values which are like respect the user, respect the opportunity, and respect each other, right? So when we say respect the user, we don't discriminate, right? We want our products to serve well across the board, irrespective of who is using it, right? Which means we ensure we have the right people building those products, right? So which means we are also hiring, from all the representative user groups. People who are going to consume it are also part of people, also part of the engineering, stage. So not just from engineering stage, but down to the go-to-market stage. We have the right user representation in those teams so that they can empathize with the customer, right? And I think it's this diverse and inclusive workplace that enables us to make all the great things happen for our customers, our business, and even for our people. And I think we mentioned this a couple of times. The leadership at Google really believes that when we create and sustain an environment where all employees feel included, customer empathy will naturally reflect in our products and capabilities, right? And which is what we call as respect the user. Now, Google Search being available in 149 languages, Google Translate being available in 108 languages, right? Maps showing the optimal route with the lowest carbon footprint really shows how the products are built with the next 4 billion mindset. So I think the beauty is underlying all these offerings is Google Cloud, which is what we are now offering to our enterprise customers of all shapes and sizes. It's not just for the big enterprises, right? So I think the innovation and creativity that we see in Google products and offerings really comes from the diverse mindsets and the backgrounds of the engineers, the product managers, down to the customer engineers who are trying to solve, a unique customer problem every day. So
That's fabulous. Sorry, Rajesh, were you going to say something?
No, no, I'm good. Thanks.
No, no, I was just thinking as you were saying, and I thought that's fabulous because what you're saying is, look, our customers, our product is designed to make customers' lives easier, organize words and information for every person on the face of this planet. Doesn't matter where it is, and that has to find a representation within the organization. Um, and that's really, really interesting. And I have to say this, right? To be very honest, Manisha and Rajesh, I'm sure both of you have worked in other organizations. Every organization starts off by saying, I want to be inclusive. There are very few organizations that would say, I really don't. But to sustain it,
Yeah.
that's the challenge because over a period of time, like Rajesh had talked about in one of the earlier questions, that you start off with the best of intentions, but unconsciously these biases play out. Unconsciously these things happen. But Google and Google Cloud have sustained it, stayed accountable, and that's really, really admirable. And I can see why, because of leaders like you, because you both of you are your understanding, and I think also the engagement of this value from your heart is really, really visible. So thank you for that, Manisha. My next question, of course, goes out to Rajesh. So Rajesh, we're talking about this very inclusive culture, this very open culture. You, like you said, I've been with Google Cloud for 2 years. You're a veteran by technology in today's world. Then you're a veteran, and your own journey at Google Cloud. How have you seen this culture come to life? Any anecdotes, anything that
Sure, sure.
you?
Sure, Shweta. Yeah, absolutely. There are a few things that come to mind. I can talk about two of them. The first
Sure.
thing, when I was talking to a few folks internally and within the people ops team, in fact, and we all talk about culture, how important it is, and so on. One thing I heard which really stayed with me is that when we look at getting people on board, right, or when we hire them, it's not necessarily always about culture fit, right? We always say, does this individual fit our culture? And I heard, no, it's not about culture fit; it's about culture add. what do they add to our culture, right? Because that's important too. Yes, we might be doing the greatest and the best things possible, but we're not perfect by any means, right? Nobody's perfect. So what can this individual bring that can add to our culture rather than trying to fit into the way we want them to behave? We don't want them to fit into our way of doing things, but what additional thing can they bring? And I see that happening quite a bit, right? When new individuals join, like Manisha and I joined from different organizations, our opinions are really valued, right? So if we feel that things are not going the way they are, uh, nobody would mind if we say, no, this is not the right way to do things. Why don't we look at another way? And that's seriously considered. And there is something that so when we do our leadership meeting, right, that is genuinely taken into account. So that's the first example which I thought was really interesting about culture add versus culture fit. The second one I think is more of a forum. I spoke about how people can openly ask any question, and I've seen that as well, right? Without any rehearsal, without any prep of all the questions that our CEO, either for Cloud CEO or the Google overall CEO gets, ad hoc questions, right? Anybody asking, why are we working with a specific organization that we think we shouldn't be working, right? In a large forum, and like I said, the CEO is not prepared to, even hasn't seen that question before, but will openly and candidly answer, which means you're encouraged to ask tough questions, right? And we have those forums, right? We have a forum called TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. It used to happen, much more often. Now with the virtual world, we've got a few tweaks. It's a global forum, right? TGIF, where all Googlers come together to discuss how the company's been doing, and it's headed by Sundar Pichai, or we have something called the Weather Report that's specifically for cloud, which is by Thomas Kurian, right? And these sessions, although they're called Thank God It's Friday, they're actually happening on Thursday, right? The reason why they're happening on Thursday is because it's already Friday in Asia Pacific, right? And it's not only a US centric company anymore. It's a global, truly a global company, which means when that session happens, if it was happening on a Friday evening in the US, it's already Saturday morning in Australia or somewhere in Asia Pacific. So it's not really TGIF for them. So that's when I learned, I asked this question, it's TGIF, why is it happening on a Thursday evening US time, right? And I was told it's happening Thursday because it's already Friday somewhere in the world in Asia Pacific. And that also an example of inclusivity in my sense, right? We're trying to include people, saying that we don't want you to work on a Saturday morning and listen to a TGIF forum because it's Friday in the US and we don't care about it's a weekend for you, right? We'll still do it anyway, and you figure out a way to listen to it. They brought it up by Thursday, right? So these were two good examples. I thought, how when we talk about culture, these things when they play out in practice, then you realize it's not just talk, right? There is real thought that's gone into it and execution happening on the ground as well. And I can go on, but I thought these two were things that stood out for me in the last 2.5 years at least.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, Rajesh. Of course, you talked about culture ad, that itself, you're so right. I mean, I've seen organizations, culture fit. So doesn't matter who I take, I will mold them into my culture, right? So where is the point of hiring a diverse if you're not going to let them stay different? Yeah. But I really loved the one point that you said. It made me think that culture is about what action you take. It's not just words, but and I think the two things you talked about, right? The CEO being able to answer uncomfortable questions. Why are we working with this organization? I mean, we're not seeing. That's a really uncomfortable question, and you're right. I mean, most of the times, many organizations, and I'm sure that's changing, but the CEO is prepped, the questions are prepped. Yeah. But to have this level of openness, this level of courage, that's truly, truly openness. And I really, really appreciate what you talked about it. And a big shout of, big round of applause to Google Cloud, because we talk about international global companies, but to be able to say thank God it's Friday on a Thursday, because I need to think of Friday from the point of view of my people who are in the Far East. Yeah. Think of it from their point of view. You're absolutely right. That's truly inclusive. So great examples.
Just to add to that, yeah, I mean, I got so passionate when Rajesh was talking about it. So I think I have seen, same sort of, meetings happening, discussions happening multiple times by shifting the time zones, which adds to a lot of operational overhead. But end of the day, the teams who are doing it, they want to make sure they are reaching to the user or the end customer. So for them, it's the internal audience, right? They want that message to be heard by the internal audience. And they can always say that, we'll do like one for Western world and one for Eastern world, but then they do it for like multiple sub regions, and they don't mind doing it again and again, because end of the day it's saying versus doing, right? So they're showing it in action rather than just making it an academic exercise.
True, so true. This is like I think that's the message that I'm getting consistently. It's really not about what you say and put up as a value statement. It's really
Yeah.
what you do, and you make sure everybody does. It's doing and then holding people accountable for it. Um, I'm going to now, Manisha, this is relating back to. I'm going to come back to you and ask you this question and relating to uh, the conversation we were having just as we got started, which is that it's a journey, right? And while Google Cloud is doing a lot, I'm sure you guys believe that there's a lot more that you need to do. So, Manisha, starting with you, as a leader, right? And you're playing a very, very big, huge role. You're impacting customers, you're impacting the lives of your employees. What's your vision for setting up a new milestone or benchmark for really exemplifying an inclusive and open culture at Google Cloud?
Yeah, and I think you rightly started with it, right? So even though we are doing a lot, to foster this culture of inclusion, diversity, openness, our leadership is committed to it. I believe making an organization inclusive is really a journey. It's an evolution, right? Like you said, and to develop it into a culture, it will take some time, right? So I believe it has to be done at each level for it to really convert it into something which is in the DNA of the organization. So at my level, like I mentioned earlier, I really put this at the core of our everyday business. So I am part of the go-to-market team for India, and personally, I personally feel that we can do a lot better than what where we are today. We can have a lot more diverse workforce, and it's not just with us. I think it's a norm across the industry. There is a paucity of diverse talent, especially women talent, for these client facing roles, as well as when you look, the gap widens when you look at women in technology and women at the senior leadership positions, right? I would certainly want to have more company there. And as an effort towards that, I'm part of a very passionate group of women at Google India, as well as APAC Women at Cloud, and that's the organization through which I'm connecting with WiT-ACE as well, where we are focused on creating a better mind share amongst the women in tech communities around Google Cloud, and B, provide them with the right coaching, mentoring, resources, which can help them be a part of our teams, right? So unfortunately, for a lot of folks I've observed, Google is still a distant dream, right? And I personally want to bust that myth. And I want to encourage all those talented women and underrepresented segments of the society to come out of their comfort zones and challenge themselves, right? So personally, if I can help at least 5 such candidates succeed with their career aspirations every year, that will be my personal milestone achieved, right? So this is my bit that I'm doing towards it.
It's beautiful. By the way, I noticed that in your signature, it's up to me, women at Google. Um,
Yeah,
it's a very
right.
interesting thing. And I think you're so right, Manisha, that it is not just about being figuring out a way to be inclusive in the organization, but to really to now take this to the community. And you're absolutely right. Uh, to the tech, almost everybody, but certainly in the tech world, uh, Google is very aspirational. And if somewhere there is a woman techie sitting and dreaming of a career in Google Cloud and thinking, I don't know, maybe I don't have it in me, but if the efforts that you take could probably make her feel, no, I think I can. That would be really something worth it, isn't it? So thank you for
I
that,
just like
Manisha.
to add one thing. There's
Please.
something called Cloud Sprint we are doing, which is
Mhm.
focusing on women talent who applied to Google, but they for some reason couldn't succeed. Now we are
Ah,
helping them, get up to speed and overcome their gaps, and now maybe they can come back and take another shot at it.
wow. So you're saying have another chance, try
Yes,
again.
yes, that's right.
Exemplary. That's truly exemplary. Um, really, really, so much to learn. Rajesh, the same question to you. So, um, what is your dream? If you have, uh, and I loved what you had said, Rajesh, in the conversation earlier on. You said, the fact that I and Manisha have come from other organizations and we felt heard, and I'm sure now you feel like I want to be committed. If you had a vision or a milestone or a marker for exemplifying a very inclusive and open culture at Google? What is your sort of dream or vision?
Yeah, I think it has to get down to every level. It's not just for the managers or, just because Manisha and I manage a team, so we talk about inclusivity and everything else. It has to be everybody, right? People who are interns, folks who are, early in their careers, folks who've had some experience, individual contributors. I think the milestone or benchmark for me would be that everybody understands this extremely well. And that's why we are so emphasizing so much on the hiring process, that people get that really, really well. And second is everybody participates, right? It's not just about being on the sidelines or on the edges. Yeah, I do like it. I know what you're saying, but then really don't do anything about it. So I'll give you a couple of examples there again. I don't remember the exact name, but there is something internally called Women in India, Women at Google or something like that. And that's not open only to women. It's open to men as well. I'm part of that group. So I get emails. That goes to a alias which talks about women at Google, and I get that email, right?
Manisha, I was waiting for Rajesh to come back, but I do have a question that I was very curious to ask you. You know, when you first came to Google and you saw this very inclusive culture, of course, you've been in large inclusive companies before. Was it surprising, something that surprised you, that made you feel, oh, I mean, that feels a little uncomfortable or surprising? Inclusive might be there, but it, like for example, this Google interview, it's new. It's kind of, it makes you think, right? So, any such incidents that come to mind?
I think if I can state my experience in one sentence or one phrase, it was like I felt like I got a seat on the table, right? I literally felt that. And I think I have worked in leadership positions earlier, but I always felt like, I was part of a group. And I mean, I used to share opinions, I used to, share my thoughts around it, but I don't remember a lot of decisions, being made based on my opinions. Whereas here, when I say something, people, come on their elbows, they listen to me. And, there are things, people are changing course of action based on what I say, right? So at times it was unreal initially. It was like I felt a little, sort of less confident, and I was not very sure whether this is happening. Is it because of me, or is it, am I saying the right? So I think I'll just summarize that it was quite unreal for me to be treated like equal, right? So and again, I think since this team is still growing, I would say we have a long way to go from a diversity perspective. But then I never felt that kind of a gap. I never felt that I'm in the minority, right? So yeah, that was my experience.
Yes, Rajesh, back to you. We just lost you in
No.
the middle of a sentence. You were just going to start off with the example and we lost you.
Yeah. No, I was saying, when you have groups, as I was saying, Women at Google, right? It's open to everybody. I'm part of it. There is a mentoring ring, I think, that Manisha was talking about, where we have mentors. So I'm a mentor as part of that group as well. There's another very good initiative, I'm sure Manisha knows this as well, called I Am Remarkable, right? Which was started for women employees, for how do you market your own self? It's good, right? Otherwise, you'll always be in the shadows. How do you, let people know what you do and how you do it? So I Am Remarkable is a program that was originally meant for women, but now I see my male colleagues as well being part of I Am Remarkable, because it's like I said, it's not just about it's not just about one gender. It's about how everybody can lift themselves up. So those are some things, and that's what I meant by saying, from a milestone or a vision, it shouldn't be restricted only to managers or leaders. It has to get down to every single individual in the organization, and that's what I would love to see continuing to get more pervasive in that sense. Yeah.
Very interesting, right? So you said that, you start off with an initiative for women, but then even men will be like, even I want to build my own brand. And yes, it's about lifting everybody up. It's not about a gender. And I think that's how, because it's so real and authentic, you've been able to manage to avoid the tokenism that sometimes comes out with this whole D&I thing. And, Rajesh, when you were, when the network was down, I was asking Manisha about what surprised her at Google. And she talked about the fact that the place at the table is actually real. Anything that you would like to add, Rajesh, where you felt like when you first came to Google, you were taken in by a pleasant surprise, like, oh my God, I didn't believe it would be this open. Any anecdote that you'd like to share with us?
No, I think I already touched upon that. It's about the nature of the questions that were being asked, right? At very senior and very large forums. I would generally, I've seen they're a bit guarded. here I thought that guardedness was not there, right? It was an internal forum, but still people were encouraged to ask very, very difficult questions. And I saw the responses as well. Nobody said that, okay, we'll take this offline or we'll take it later. People were answering those kind of tough questions too, which I thought was a pleasant surprise to me. And I thought that's truly open, right? Even basic things like, we do a lot of internal collaboration using Google Docs and Sheets and so on, right? A lot of these docs, which are internal, but obviously we trust our people to keep things confidential. They're open to almost everybody, right? In terms of what's happening, the roadmap. And I saw even, I don't need to know that, but it's still available to me because the company wants me to know the direction with which we are going, right? And they trust me enough to not really, misuse that information. So that level of openness, I thought, was really, really a good, pleasant surprise for me.
And just to add to that, we have an open calendar policy. So it's optional, of course, people can choose to, not show it, but anybody can see what's on your calendar for the day, right? And block calendars whenever they want to. So I've seen people, having 30 minutes of pranayam, time with my kids, those kind of things on the calendar. So that's good. That's really good.
That's really beautiful because I think what Rajesh is saying and Manisha, what you just said, right? It's about the little actions that add up. And not not the words, not the air that comes out of your mouth, but really the little actions. I mean, and I'm really, really a big salute to Google Cloud, because if you are able to share docs, openly, because I believe that my employees need to know. That's truly, truly openness.
It also goes back to trust. I mean, we're trusting
Correct.
folks to do the right thing, right? And not necessarily trying to constrain them. Yeah.
Correct. No, and trust begets more trust, right? The more trust the organization shows, employees then rise up literally to kind of live up to that trust and really. So anyway, we've come to the end of this session, and I can't tell you how much of joy it has been for me to be speaking to both of you, Manisha and Rajesh, to get to know of your ideas and also the passion with which you both spoke. I think that is shining across through and through, even on a virtual call. So it's really been a pleasure and a privilege to be speaking to both of you. Thank you very much for sharing your insights, and have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you so much. Big thank you from all of us at Spark.
Sure. Thank you so much, Shweta.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Rajesh.
Bye, Manisha. Bye, Shweta.